It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Driving home, Rico Brogna. In my car after a New York Mets victory with a smile on my face, with a smile on your face. Welcome to a drive home edition of the Rico Brogna. I apologize for those that were excited that I would be broadcasting live from the Spanish-speaking Mets box. Unfortunately, it was not available tonight. So I'm on the road. I'm driving home from Citi Field. And here's all you need to know. What a great combination. The combination of the Mets not drawing very well, plus hey, sorry about that. I had to honk a taxi driver because taxi drivers believe they own the road and they believe they can do whatever the hell they want. And they need to realize I'm the king on this road when I'm driving. And they don't get to just U-turn wherever they want. I'm going to get on that horn, and I'm going to tell them to get out of the way. But I'm going to let you go because you're a nice guy. Letting a vendor leave because I'm a kind guy. Anyhow, you know the combination of the Mets aren't drawing and the Mets just whip that candy ass so badly, you can go too. You seem like a nice guy. Thank you for waving at me. See, I'm a friendly guy. I may honk a taxi driver. I may tell him what he is, which is an ass. But for everybody else, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you cross the street. I am a nice, sweet man. But anyhow, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, the combination of the Mets aren't drawing and the Mets whip that candy ass allowed it to be a very easy exit if you went to Citi Field on this Tuesday night. Because it's a Tuesday. For those that came, you're whipping Washington badly. You want to get home. Like, what are you hanging around for? Do you really need to see Alex Young somehow try to record the final 3 outs? Now, I'm a sucker. My dad taught me at a very young age, you never, ever, ever leave a game early, no matter what. So, especially when you're kicking ass, especially when you're winning. But I stayed to the very end, me and about 700 other people. I'm not sure. But a great victory and a great exit because I'm already out of the parking lot and I'm almost going to be on the hutch before you know it. So that's good. I like that. As far as this game is concerned, in the top of the third inning, we had a moment. We all had a moment, let's all be honest. In the top of the third inning, Mark Vientos made a low throw to second base on what should have been a relatively easy fielder's choice. They were never going to turn a double play. And unfortunately, Mark, who's played a very good third base, made a low throw. Luis Angel Acuna, who is playing shortstop for the injured Francisco Lindor, and I think we all agree should be the shortstop until Lindor is back, could not field said low throw. And what probably transpired is Met fans panicked. Met fans said, oh my God, this is why we can't survive without Francisco Lindor. Because here's this rookie in the middle of a pennant race, unable to make what I'm not going to say was the easiest play in the world. Because again, if we're being fair, Vientos' throw was low. It had some sinking action on it. But Luis Angel Acuna could not make that play. And that directly led to the Nationals taking a 1-0 lead. We also saw him unable to turn a double play, in which on a ground ball to shortstop, which I think he should have just taken to the bag himself and then fired off to first base, he decides to flip to Jose Iglesias, who had all his momentum going away from him. So we saw Luis Angel Acuna make 2, let's call them miscues, in the top of the third inning. Now, luckily, Tylor Megill showed a little bit of guts and was able to fight through that inning, actually never allowed a hit in that inning and only allowed the one unearned run. But in that moment, we were worried. We were worried about not only this game because the offense has done dick, but we were worried about Acuna. You know you were. As good as his defense looked over the weekend in Philadelphia, there was a little, hey, I don't know what we're getting from this guy. This is a young player. Is he going to kind of wilt under the pressures of a pennant race? And then Luis Angel Acuna, with a runner on first and nobody out in the bottom of the third inning with the Mets down a run. I actually said to my friend I went with, I said to Dennis, Dennis, I think I'd consider bunting with Acuna. Now, granted, runner on first, nobody out, down 1-0. Am I really panicking to that level? And it was more a conversation than it was I definitely want to do this. I also haven't seen Luis Angel Acuna bunt. I don't know what kind of bunter he is, but I thought about it. figuring, you know what, Jose Iglesias is their best clutch hitter. Every run is so precious. And maybe you lay down a bunt and someone throws it away. And maybe the Washington Nationals make a miscue. And as we're having this discussion, Luisangel Acuna hit the absolute tar out of a baseball into the left field corner. And very promptly, the game was tied at 1. And from that moment on, the romp was on, the butt whipping was on, the offense giving us a little bit of an explosion was on. Jose Iglesias, 3 more base hits, showing the speed beating out infield singles. Pete Alonso, before we get to the home run that you probably want to criticize, big spot, especially after that team meeting, which I do want to address a little bit later. He bloops one into right field for a clutch 2-run single. And I know he didn't hit the ball very hard. What was it? I mean, what was the exit velo on SNY? 45 miles an hour? Whatever it was, it actually reminded me of the David Wright RBI hit in Game 7 against the Cardinals. I think that was the only run they scored in that game. And David blooped it. And I don't know if Licata remembers this. He probably doesn't, but Sal and I used to argue about David Wright. He used to call him the Golden Boy. And, I love David. So we would argue about it. And one of my defenses of David, when Sal would say he's not clutch, he's this, he's that, was that he got a big hit in Game 7. And I think the retort was, well, he hit a freaking little blooper. And I remember saying then, what I will say now, I don't care if a ball is hit 120 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour. That's a big hit. It fell in. I'll take the luck. He'll take the luck. And it was a big, big hit because I think once they went up 3-1 and then eventually 4-1, and then, obviously they broke the game open. Francisco Alvarez goes deep. Pete Alonso hits a home run later on in the game. I think that relaxed us. Okay, they're up 4-1. Okay, I feel good. I feel comfortable. And so that was a very important base hit. I would not minimize it because it wasn't hit hard. Now, for anyone who wants to minimize Pete Alonso's home run later in the game, I'll give you that because my friend called it. And I think the way he called it was game's out of reach. This is where Pete hits a bomb and pads the numbers, and actually tried to very quickly go to the FanDuel app and bet on it and was unable to do it in time. So he lost a couple of shekels by not quickly betting Pete Alonso. And I think when the count was 0-2, he even said, 0-2, even better. And look, here's the truth about that. We need Pete to hit. I think we all know that. This is not, defending him from some of his struggles. And look, it's not overall struggles. I think a lot of it is just not hitting it for enough power and not kind of carrying the offense the way that we know he's capable of. I will never begrudge a guy for hitting a home run in a 7-1 game because you're at the plate and you're trying to do damage. That's what you're trying to do. And, maybe you are more relaxed in a blowout, but I will never penalize somebody for it. So, and I know I've said this 100 times, but hopefully Pete Alonso hitting a home run late in the game that turned into a blowout gets him going because they need him. And by getting him going, I don't mean getting a couple of infield hits in a game or a couple of, whatevers. I'm talking about bombs. He's paid to hit bombs. And hopefully over the course of these last 11 games, Pete Alonso could hit a few more of those. But then we get to Luisangel Acuna, who responded from that miscue, responded from that error by getting one of the bigger hits early in that third inning to spark the rally, gets another hit later, and then, granted, game is out of reach, same argument you could use about Pete, hits his first major league home run. And the one out he made, because Acuna was 3 for 4, the one out he made was a line drive to center field, a ball he hit very hard. So what an outstanding performance by Luisangel Acuna. This is not an easy gig that he has. He is trying to replace, fill in, however you want to phrase it, for a guy who's making a legitimate case for the National League MVP. And you're doing that while the Mets are struggling to score runs. I give Acuna a lot of credit. I think it goes without question. He should be the everyday shortstop until Lindor is back. No thank you, Eddie Alvarez. Eddie Alvarez made a great diving play defensively at second base. Eddie Alvarez is what he is. He's a utility player. One other thing about Pete I do want to point out, and I think even the most ardent Alonso hater would have to give ground on this, how good has his defense been over the last couple of days? He has made almost a diving play every single day. It really has been incredible how good defensively Pete Alonso has been. But they need his bat. They need his stick. Luckily on this night, Tyrone Taylor continued to be hitting at a rampagian kind of clip. He should play every day for now. I think you got to reward guys when they're hitting. J.D. Martinez continued to look lost at the plate. Francisco Alvarez hit that laser beam of a home run and then pimped the crap out of it. I thought Francisco Alvarez pimped that home run so much that I was convinced he was either getting drilled his next at-bat or Bader was getting drilled when he came up next. Neither happened. I also noticed that the Mets took Francisco Alvarez out of the game. Maybe Carlos Mendoza realized, you know what, game's a blowout. I can't risk it. I don't have a problem with Alvarez pimping it. Francisco has had a very frustrating year offensively. Much like I said about Pete, you certainly hope that these home runs that he's hit, going back even a few more days, but certainly what he did in this game, gets him going and gets him on an offensive rampage over the last week and a half of the season. Is it a week and a half of the season? Yeah, I guess it's only a week and a half. That's freaking nuts to even think about. But I don't have a problem with him pimping it. He stared at the plate. It took him an hour and a half to get around the bases. I'm not sure if they mentioned that on the broadcast, but I certainly mentioned it or noticed it in the ballpark. But good to see him break out. Look, this was fun. I know it's a blowout, but I like blowouts. I don't like close games. I said this on Rico last night. You know, I'm glad they won last night, but who the hell wants to deal with that? I don't want to deal with that kind of stress. And this game, outside of the stress of the top of the third inning, really didn't feature it. Now, how could I forget the big drip himself? Tylor Megill. Tylor Megill now, in his last two starts against Toronto and now against Washington, has pitched 12 innings, allowed 0 earned runs because the 1 run he allowed in this game was unearned because of the Acuna or Vientos era. It was gone to Acuna, but again, not a great throw. And he's allowed 3 base hits. So Tylor Megill has allowed 3 base hits and 1 unearned run in his last 2 starts in the last 12 innings he's pitched. He has done as great of a job filling in for the injured Paul Blackburn as one can imagine. In fact, he's done such a great job filling in. I think he's sort of starting to create a conundrum. And that conundrum is, if Kodai Senga is ready to come back for that final series of the year against Milwaukee, what do you do with him? Jose Quintana is pitching some of his best baseball. Are you going to have Kodai Senga open for Jose Quintana? Are you going to have Kodai Senga open for Tylor Megill? I don't think you want to do that with Sean Manaea or David Peterson or Luis Severino. It's a good problem to have. Obviously, the Mets starting pitching being as insanely good as it's been over the last couple of months, really, is nothing to complain about. It just makes the Senga decision, if the Mets have one on him, very interesting on how they want to handle that. But what an amazing night. And despite the small crowd, and it was a small crowd, I'm not going to waste everybody's time on that. It is what it is. We can all debate why, how, all that. But it was a very energetic crowd. And that is the one thing that I've certainly noticed over the last few months of the season. The Mets haven't been drawn, but their crowds have been more energized because everybody in the building knows what's at stake. Everybody in the building is looking at the scoreboard feverishly. Back in April and May and June, I'm the one geek analyzing scoreboard watching, and it's really a waste of time because you never know who's actually going to be there. But in mid-September, on a soon-to-be autumn night, the eyes are darting at that scoreboard. And so when the Atlanta Braves, because as soon as I sat down, the Braves were up 3-0. I was on the train heading over to Citi Field, and the Braves were up 3-0, and I just assumed, okay, it's the Cincinnati Reds. They lost last night. They've lost 2 in a row. Braves will bounce back. As long as the Mets take care of business, that's okay. They will maintain a 1-game lead for that 3rd wildcard spot. But the crowd responded to every Cincinnati rally. When the Reds made it a 1-run game, it was like a murmur. But when the Reds took the lead, it was funny. It was one of those rare moments where I wasn't looking at the scoreboard. I wasn't checking my phone to see the score. I was just, believe it or not, enjoying my surroundings. And when the crowd started erupting when the Reds took the lead, I had no idea why. I said, To my friend, I said, why are they going nuts? And at first, Joey Gallo was in the middle of an at-bat. And so he thought that the crowd was mocking Joey Gallo. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Joey Gallo's played the entire game. Why are we mocking him now? And then my eyes darted to that left field scoreboard. And I saw, wow, the Cincinnati Reds came back and they took the lead. And I think, the fact the Mets had a big lead in this game certainly contributed to it. But you noticed that everybody in the ballpark was uber focused on that scoreboard. And there actually was, believe it or not, a Let's Go Rockies chant that erupted as we were leaving the building. So I know it's not a big crowd, but it's an engaged crowd. It's an energetic crowd. It's a crowd that knows what's at stake. And this Tuesday night, game 2 of this 3-game series, is proving to be a very, very important night. As we are doing this podcast, I know a lot of people listen in the morning the following day. You will know how San Diego and Arizona did. I can't tell you that as I drive home. So we'll see if it's a completely good night. But certainly the Atlanta Braves losing and the Mets building now a 2-game lead on that third wild card spot is monstrous, because you need to create a cushion for 2 reasons. Okay, 2 very important reasons. And this is not being me being negative. It's just the reality of the situation. Number 1, the Mets are about to engage, once they're done with Washington tomorrow, with another 4 games against the Philadelphia Phillies, a team that's played very good baseball over the last week or so, or 2 weeks really. The Mets will be facing some of their better pitchers, including Zach Wheeler. You may be familiar with him. It is a step up in competition. It's also a team that's looking to clinch the National League East in our building. Let that be known. The Philadelphia Phillies will have a chance, I think it's with winning 2 games potentially in this series, to party, to clinch the division at Citi Field. It's a step up in competition while the Atlanta Braves are playing Cincinnati and then Miami. So there's a chance we're going to lose ground. It just is what it is. I mean, it's a step up in competition. But the other thing is, going into this Atlanta series, I want to have a cushion. I know the Mets sort of had a cushion 2 years ago. All they needed to do was win a game, and they would have left that series with the tiebreaker and at least in possession of the National League East going into that final series of the year against Washington. So they did have a little bit of a cushion, a very tiny cushion, but nevertheless, you go into a series only needing 1 win. That's a pretty damn good cushion. I want to have as big of a cushion as humanly possible going into that Atlanta series. I know a few weeks ago, I was saying, sign me up to be 1 game out. Obviously, when you have a 2-game lead and there's only 5 more to play before you get to that Atlanta series, you start to be a little bit more aggressive in what you're hoping for. So every game matters. Every game matters. And obviously, the Arizona Diamondbacks are not a team we can forget. I mean, the Mets have the tiebreaker on them, and they're right there with them. And Arizona's schedule is pretty tricky to conclude this season. But I think the reminder is, like, the Mets have proven this as a reminder over the years. Certainly Arizona's dealing with this as they play Colorado, and Atlanta's playing Cincinnati. Just because you're playing a crappy team doesn't mean you're going to beat them. I mean, the Mets proved that to us all through September of 2022. Just because you're playing a team you should beat doesn't mean you will beat them. Now, so far, through this 3-game series against the Nationals, the Mets have done that. And if the Mets can sweep this series on a Wednesday night at Citi Field with the red-hot Jose Quintana on the mound, they will have finished the season series against the Washington Nationals 11-2. Now, even if they lose in the finale of this series, it'll be a 10-3 run. So they have done a very good job against the Washington Nationals during this season series. They didn't do a good job against the Marlins. They completely underachieved. What, they 7-6 against the Marlins? That's crap. But luckily, against a talented Washington team, they have been a lot better. And hopefully, this offense will now burst out of the seams after what they did in this game in Game 2 of this series against the Washington Nationals. Hoff, anything you'd like to add to this wonderful, wonderful victory at Citi Field on just a beautiful summerish Tuesday night?
Well, I just wanted to say that I love you. You make my days go by better when something like this happens. Thank God this was a easy win because I can't take the stress. There's 11 games left, Evan. 11 games left. We haven't hit the playoffs, and I feel like we're actually in the playoffs right now. It's too intense already. I'm very frustrated. Here's a couple of things, too. I do have to piggyback on some stuff. I couldn't stand Tylor Megill. I didn't want to see him in the rotation. Guy's been a stud. I was wrong with that. Lucian Acuna, I didn't think he had any power. Dude, that swing is identical to his brother. I cannot believe that, dude. It's sick. I keep on seeing the replays. It's good. He's a freaking stud. And thank you, Alexis Diaz, for helping us out. I know you felt bad about last year, Edwin Diaz, going down with injury. So you're having a little revenge tour against the Atlanta Braves. Thank you. And finally, we do miss Francisco Lindor. I don't care how good Acuna's bat's going to be. Lindor covers so much ground defensively. You miss him.
Oh, no doubt about it. It's as Acuna ripped that home run, I'm sure there was a thought that went through everybody's mind rather briefly, or maybe not briefly, maybe you're still thinking about it. And that was, what if Acuna tears it up for the next couple of days? Like, what does that do for when Lindor hopefully does come back? Obviously, we don't know when Lindor is going to come back. Hopefully it's soon. And obviously, I'm not suggesting Lindor doesn't play. That'd be the most ridiculous thing ever. Lindor is the MVP or an MVP candidate. He will be the shortstop. But remember, Luisangel Acuna was learning other positions in the minor leagues. He was learning other positions because there is no future for him at shortstop at the major league level. And you start to think, is there a way, if Acuna's hitting? I mean, this was a very impressive 3-hit game. As I mentioned, he really could have gone 4-for-4 because the one time they got him out, he ripped a line drive right at the center fielder, and you talked about the home run he hit. Is there a way where Acuna could actually work his way into the starting lineup, even with a returning Francisco Lindor? So he played a little bit of second base down in the minor leagues. I don't think that's a spot for him because Jose Iglesias is also an everyday player. Mark Vientos, despite a little bit of a batting slump, everyday player. But then you start to think about the outfield. Would the Mets have enough confidence for Luisangel Acuna to become a factor in the outfield? Harrison Bader, for the most part, has not hit a lot. Brandon Nimmo hasn't hit. We didn't see him in the...
I think we lost Mr. Evan. He's in a free zone. Oh, there he is. He's back. Evan's back, everybody.
I apologize. I know that's the problem with the drive home. I'm telling you, the next time I go to a game and we do a Rico, we're going to do it from the Spanish announcers table, as my friend likes to call it, because it's professional wrestling with the Spanish announcers table. So I apologize. I know the drive homes aren't perfect, but is there a way for Acuna to actually steal at bats? Look, I gave you some lighting. You like that, Pete?
Oh, hey, you have a face.
Yeah, I don't think you're legally allowed to drive with the light. Are you allowed to drive with your light on
They could
from
pull
the
you
inside
over.
of the car?
They could pull you over.
All right, so that's gone. Let me shut that off. No ticket for me. But
Yeah.
hopefully Acuna makes that an actual discussion. Like, how do we get his bat in the lineup with Lindor back? But here's the other thing about Lindor. And I talked about this on the air today because we were all making predictions on when we think Lindor is going to come back. And my honest prediction is the Atlanta series. I don't think he's going to play this weekend against the Philadelphia Phillies. But I think the better the Mets do without him and the bigger cushion they give themselves, the more they can be conservative. The more they can say, you know what? Let's continue to give him as much rest as possible because of how important those 3 games against Atlanta are. So I think if the Mets can somehow continue to win games and maintain this lead, I think there's a chance the Mets may be even more conservative with Francisco Lindor, and they probably should be, because we need him healthy for the series against Atlanta. That's imperative. That's the priority.
Real quick, what do you think? I mean, listen, Arizona, if they lose this game and we're tied, we have the series victory over Arizona, so we'll be in second place. Do we start to think about where we want to be positioned in the playoffs, or do we just want to get in?
No!
Oh,
I just want to get in. Positioning. And truthfully, positioning. Just get me to the freaking playoffs. I mean, whether it's a series against San Diego, a series against Milwaukee, a series, it doesn't freaking matter. Like, just get to the playoffs. The reality is, while the Mets are never going into the playoffs as a favorite, I don't believe any team in the National League is that unbeatable. I mean, the Phillies are probably the best team based on the health of their starting pitching and how good their bullpen is when you compare it to everybody else. But the Brewers are beatable. The Dodgers are beatable. I do think the Phillies are beatable, even if they're the best team in the National League. So just get in and let's take our damn chances. Anyhow, I am not going to the game for game 3 of this series, so we'll have a traditional Rico Brogna following the conclusion of Wednesday night's game to recap the series and, more importantly, recap the game and also look ahead to what's happening with the Philadelphia Phillies in the 4-game series. So we do have a Rico coming up tomorrow night. And like I mentioned, we're going to try to do Ricos every day until this regular season ends, with the exception of Thursday, because that's New York Jets, Aaron Rodgers home opener day. And that personally is going to be a tough day because I am going to that game and the Mets are home. And you know me, I'm a DVR snob. I cannot attempt to DVR a Mets game while I'm at a Jets Thursday night game. So I will be the guy with the iPad out with the Met game on while the Jet game is on. So something I've done many times at Citi Field, where I have another sporting event on at Citi Field. I will do that at MetLife Stadium, and hopefully we'll have a Mets victory and a Jets victory on Thursday night.
And I could attest, he's watching usually the Brooklyn Nets while he's watching the Mets at Citi Field, and it's probably one of the most heartbreaking things watching him watch a terrible basketball team of the Nets.
Well, yeah, because those games are in April when the season's over. I mean, imagine this year, this upcoming next season, when it's like April 5th, and I'm watching the Brooklyn Nets try to avoid their 68th loss of the season, and I'm at Citi Field while it's all happening. Yeah, it's a depressing state of affairs.
I do have an announcement to make, by the way. There will be somebody in the crowd on Friday night, and it's going to be the first for us this year. It's going to be the BT and Sal show. We are going to be...
You better bring us good karma. I don't need any negative karma from you guys on that Friday night.
No. It's all... But Sal may sing something about the wild card. I'm not sure, but I'll try to put a muzzle in his mouth if possible.
Where are you guys sitting so people can annoy you?
I do not know yet, but we will find that out very, very soon, and we'll make the announcement on one of either the Rico tomorrow or sometime on air.
Here's the real question: are you guys going to pay for tickets, or are you just getting freebies from somebody?
I went through somebody to get them. Yes.
Nah, listen, I respect that. I mean, why would you want to spend money? I don't. I do because I'm a schmuck. That's my own problem. Anyhow, we appreciate everybody listening and downloading and subscribing to another happy drive home edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.